talk at all, Allison? No. All right. Okay. All right. So why don't we let everyone in? So hold on just a minute and we'll get started with our special guest this morning. Great crew. All right. Well, good morning, Coalition. It's great to see you this morning. We have a great interview for you and with you, and we're excited about talking to Ann Elmore. We are not going to have Allison giving us an update today, other than the fact that I will tell you in 2 days, she will finally, after the third attempt, be a married lady. And isn't that exciting? Yes, absolutely. So she is here, but she is going to remain incognito because she is doing a lot of work to get ready for this wedding in 2 days. So anyway, we've got a great interview, as I said, with Ann Elmore, and I think a lot of you know Ann Elmore, and you all are doing so well and giving us an update in the chat there of who is here and your organization. So that's great. This is being recorded, as we've mentioned before, because we have found that a lot of people actually can't make it at 8:30 in the morning on Friday, but could look at the recording of it, and so we will have that available. So I will get right into our interview because we have some exciting things to talk about. So Ann Elmore with the Secretary of State's office, and probably not many of you know her from anything other than that, but we've had a good discussion already, and she's sent me some information about her. But Ann, tell us about where you grew up and what it was that brought you into this situation where we find you today.
Where did I grow up? You know, it's so funny. It's so natural for folks to ask that question. Although I got to pause for just a moment and thank David and Kathy and Allison and the coalition for making this opportunity available to all of us. You know, yesterday I was fussing with my husband. I was like, golly, these not being able to be together like we used to be at the task force. Remember, we could connect with each other and you engage in the small talk and you learn a little bit about each other. You know, nobody engages in small talk on webinars, on web-based meetings. And so we don't have that kind of connection like we used to have. It's been driving me crazy. So it's so good to have this chance to learn a little bit about our partners on the coalition. So thank you for this opportunity. But how did I get here?
Yeah.
Wow. My father's with IBM. Industry professionals, business people call that international business machines. We families call that I've been moved, like the military, all over the place. So I'm not from anywhere. I'm from everywhere. I'm from here. And I had the pleasure of coming to North Carolina when my parents' situation got so that they could not, it was not tenable for them to stay on the coast 2 hours from the nearest child. So I came here and I've been so delighted to join the Secretary of State's office, which has drawn together all the strands of my experience in these 60 some years to get to this point. And now I do educational outreach. And it was my very great good fortune to have, as part of that educational outreach, Advanced Healthcare Directives Registry, and then the task force was formed. And the secretary needed somebody who was interested. And that was me. So that's how I came to be here. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to connect with you all, because seriously, the things that I have learned from you, I use in my outreach. And I use it not just in my outreach to seniors, but I do business outreach. And so, they get they get a bit of advanced care planning, whether they thought that's what they were going to get or not. So anyway, that's a long answer to your very simple question.
That's great. So you said you've lived in Wisconsin, New York, Alabama, Maryland, Georgia, Florida, a bunch of different places. What were you doing there, Anne? I mean, we know that you were an attorney. Tell us a little bit about why you went to law school and then what you did for a number of years after.
Oh, it is so funny. I always wanted to be a lawyer. After we had in middle school, we had a class where it was a mock legislature, and everybody was a legislator and had to develop some legislation and get it passed. And it is based on that middle school experience that prompted me to want to become a lawyer. That, coupled with the fact that my dad insisted that I not, as the eldest child, that I not take home ec. So I don't know how to cook. If my husband didn't cook, I'd be eating popcorn every night. But, so I took debate and forensics and all of that. That, coupled with the legislative experience, spurred me to want to go to law school, to become a lawyer. And I went to undergraduate and studied journalism. And, journalism is so fascinating. You find out about all kinds of interesting things people are into, and you get to satisfy a lot of your curiosity. So I did that for 2 years, small town newspapering and photography. A lot of fun, had border tape all the time on me. But, and then I went to law school. And, in law school, I was told the idea was that criminal law was for those who but the thing is, I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And you can't get, or at least then in the middle 80s, a woman could not get a trial lawyer position unless she was a prosecuting attorney.
Huh.
So that's what I pursued while we went to Florida. I was an assistant state attorney there. And then continued that work in Georgia, in the Atlanta area, and then in Savannah, my husband's hometown. And so that was a marvelous experience, and it brought home in a real way how very important it is, and how grateful I am to meet so many people in government service who take seriously the notion that we need our best people in government service. Because, when it's private enterprise, if you don't like the way they treat you, you just go somewhere else. But when it's your government, it's your government. Where are you going to go? I mean, are you going to go to someplace in Europe, Asia? I mean, where do you go?
Yeah. Interesting. So that explains a little bit about why you've had this interest in how people operate, and then you mentioned that throughout your life you really hadn't touched in the whole world of serious illness and so forth until things began to change with your family, and then you had spades of issues. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not, but.
Well, I mentioned a bit about it. It's weird how, I feel blessed that as a child, I didn't have a lot loss and serious illness and stuff like that, although it was always in the family. My dad's brother, Jerry, had polio. And he, while my dad was in service, Jerry was a lot younger, but, a lot of the family's time and resources were spent on Jerry, who had polio and was always in the hospital. And so We had that, but it wasn't really part of my life. But then when I became an adult, I mentioned to y'all at the task force, my brother in 1994 was in a rollover accident.
Mhm.
And he was ejected and he was in a coma for nearly a month.
Mhm.
And it was horrible because there were no advanced directives. I mean, think about it. That was way back then anyway, right? But there were no advanced directives. And for my parents going forward, and with a coma, you don't know how long it's going to last, right? So are you going to hire lawyers and go, guardianship and all that stuff if it could be over tomorrow? It just sort of goes on and on and on. And it was an ordeal, but we learned nothing. We learned nothing from that experience in the sense that, and it grates on me because I'm a lawyer, right? I should have known better, but that wasn't my specialty, right? It wasn't my specialty. And everybody goes back, it was a bad experience. And you're busy. And so what happens? You bury it, you don't do anything about it. And guess what? The Lord wasn't going to let me bypass that lesson because he drove it home in 2009 when my brother died unexpectedly. And nothing was done. There was no advanced planning. Do you know what a mess that is? Especially somebody who's single, has a business of their own, a house, vehicles. It's a disaster. So then we all got our advanced care plans. But in the course of working with my mom and dad and my husband's mom and dad, we've discovered that having the documents is a starting point.
Yeah. It's
making them responsive to your needs and useful when you need them and available when you need them. All of those are real challenges. And so that's why I'm so glad to be working with all of y'all to make all of this work better.
Well, you've experienced the same thing that our whole country basically has. I mean, it was in 1995 that the Patient Self-Determination Act was passed.
91.
91, excuse me, 91. But I mean, it wasn't until, a number of things began to happen that people began to realize that there was an importance in advanced care planning. And finally, over the last 25, 29 years, we've made some changes, but and you've been in the forefront of engaging in that over these last few years. So tell us what drew you to work at the Secretary of State's office and be engaged in advanced care planning?
Well, my mom passed away in May of 2018, and I was then retired, and but had a lot of energy, and her experiences. I wanted to do something with her experiences, and I got to tell you that when you're not working, when you're retired, and I was retired, that's how I came up here as retired, it's like you don't have a voice. I volunteered. I went to meetings, and I'm interested. I never got a call. I never got an email. It's like, hello, but nobody was hearing me. And so, I still feel like I have something to contribute. And I know that I'm blessed to be working with many mature individuals, seasoned individuals. And I hope we all will keep ourselves in the game so that we can make a difference and not just leave it to those who haven't had to go through what we've gone through and had the experiences. So the opportunity to do educational outreach came available at the Secretary of State's office. And I was so grateful that they tapped me for it, because I do educational outreach regarding advanced care planning and in business and securities, investor protection. So this that work brings together my work as as a prosecuting attorney, because it's so much easier. It's so much better to not have Humpty Dumpty fall off that wall, because it's too darn hard to reassemble Humpty Dumpty. And when you reassemble all those pieces, Humpty Dumpty doesn't look like Humpty Dumpty did before falling off that wall. So, it's a wonderful opportunity, and connecting with people like you and being able to share, using that outreach opportunity to share what you all teach me. So thank you.
Well, you're teaching us as well, and I know you may not believe that entirely, but we have learned a lot from you. We've seen you just steady throughout the NCIOM task force, and now in a year and a half at the coalition, and you've been consistent. And I've got to say, your whole demeanor is an encouragement to people. And I'm just looking at the chat discussions, and here, Ann, North Carolina is blessed to have you working for all of us. We're so fortunate to have great leaders like you in state government, and you got to believe that, because it's important to have people like you, particularly at the Secretary of State's office. Let me talk for a minute about what you just said about people in retirement. And I'm looking at Steve, I'm looking at Mark, Mary, I'm looking at Charlotte, I'm looking at us, who have all been engaged in retirement in one way or another. Some are younger than others, but we got a bunch of AARPers here, and I bet they have plenty to say about volunteers not having the same voice as people who are in the work world. So tell us more about how you feel about that. No, I'm speaking to you, Ann. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just think that you have a platform when you're working. You have, it's like people take you more seriously when you're still working. It just makes a difference. I've gotten replies to emails at working with the Secretary of State's office that I never got when I was retired. But it's a chance to make a difference. As a prosecuting attorney, I was impressed by, people say, well, I want to do right. I want to represent defendants. And my view on that was, well, yeah, that's a way you can do right. But by being in government and carefully screening the cases and making sure that good cases go forward and that weak cases don't, because they're not good for the public understanding or perception of criminal justice. They don't think it's criminal justice if you're, moving forward weak cases. From in terms of protecting defendants, that's the wrong thing to do. From the perspective of protecting victims, it's the wrong thing to do, because it raises expectations that can't be met, which is devastating. So, but when I'm working in government now, obviously I'm not doing that. But, it's amazing when you work in government, there's little things you can do to make improvements. Now, y'all don't get the wrong idea. I'm not a policy spokesman for the Secretary of State's office. That's not what I do. But, the leadership at the Secretary of State's office listens. They listen. and I bring them messages, information I collect along the way. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to, sometimes in small ways, and with most things in life, things take a while. Everything takes longer than we want it to take, right? So, but there is movement if we will persist. And
Absolutely.
so thank you all for persisting.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I see a little argument about how many times Mary Bethel has retired here, whether it's 3 or 4. But Mark thinks it's 4. Mary says no, it's 3. But
Stay in the game, Mary. Stay in the game, please. We need you.
well, I don't think that's going to ever be a concern. Mary, she'll go down with her boots on. I know, just like us. But so tell us a little bit more about, you have been the consistent voice of the Secretary of State's office for many of us for quite a while. And you say you do outreach in education. I remember early on, you were defending the Secretary of State's registry for advanced care planning. And then as we began to look at legislation for some changes, some of the approach changed. And tell us about how your thinking evolved in that. Because I perceived that there was a difference that was going on, and I'm not asking you to speak inside politics, but
No, and I think you're referring to the changes wrought by the pandemic, and we were moving the registry. To my way of thinking, is a wonderful thing to have. But it was created at a time when we weren't so technologically oriented. And let's be real, the pandemic has sped that up exponentially. And so we really need for people to be able to file electronically. And we did during the pandemic, as an accommodation to the realities that we all faced, did make the opportunity available on a trial basis for folks to have either a notarization or the 2 qualified witnesses. And that has worked, and we've worked with video notary. And so we've gotten those pieces, we've gotten some experience on a trial basis, we've been able to work with those. And so, and it looks like this pandemic is gonna be endemic. So we can't seem to quite shake free of it. And yesterday I went to my dermatology PA, and he was fully vaccinated twice. 2 vaccinations with the Pfizer vaccine, just as I was. He got COVID. He got COVID. And he said it was a very bad experience. Now, he got the vaccine back in January. I didn't get my last shot until March. But, it looks like it's going to be with us for a while. And let's hope it doesn't mutate into something that's far, far worse. So that's a long way of saying that we've got to make changes. We've all got to make accommodations. And so we're working with that. Now, sometimes you can go a bit too far. And so, like my father went to a doctor the other day, and he went to the doctor, and he does not have a smartphone. There was nobody in the lobby. There was just one of those QR codes. I'm lucky my sister was able to be there with him. We've got to navigate all this. We got to be careful. We got to be cautious. So yes, the Secretary of State's office is supporting the Senate Bill 666. But there is some legislation out there that, is concerning. And so we have to all take this in a measured way, because everything connected with technology, as we've all discovered during this, is not so, the reality isn't as good as the promise.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, we really appreciate you being the voice over there at the Secretary of State's office, because it's vitally important that we have an opportunity to interact with you on that. So here is a question for you from Sue Collier. How might the coalition align with and challenge the state to focus on the needs of patients with serious illness and their caregivers? And you've got personal experience as well as professional experience in that. So how might we as a coalition align with and also challenge the state to focus on the needs of those who need caregivers?
I think the coalition has figured it out, and we were talking about that at the last general meeting, and that is, who is not at the table. It's to draw in a wider group of people, so that we are not just talking amongst, all of those that are just working in the field, that we also draw in others. And the wider our net of, especially once you hook people, and with the things that the coalition is doing, I think you can hook more people and get a broader base. So that I believe is the ticket. I saw that Charlotte asked, where is Charlotte? How can, if we can do team efforts, create opportunities for each other and work together, I think we can both expand what we know and expand the number of people that we reach. Sometimes, within our own circles, we might not be able to personally present something, but maybe we could, have somebody else come in and then supplement or comment on, add to, that kind of thing. So that's an opportunity too. And I think if we can maybe create some flyers or cards or something, like North Carolina Partnership to Address Adult Abuse has cards we can distribute at events. Not that we're doing live events right now, but if we have something that we can share, that the organization is interested in participation by others who are interested.
That's a great thought, and we can look at that further. So thank you for that. So our last question in the last minute and 20 seconds here, and this has been a great interview. Thank you, Ann. I wish we could go a lot longer, but Steve is asking, can you talk a little bit about the work you do to protect vulnerable adults, older adults especially?
Steve, thank you. Yes, it is to teach tools for them to protect themselves, right? They're the first line of defense. But we got to get the broader community aware too, not only for their own personal safety, but also to enable them to detect and effectively respond when bad actors get past the scandar for our vulnerable adults. But we got to build up our vulnerable adults and hope that, because otherwise we're just, we're the backup net. I should put it down here. We're the fallback net, but we sure would like to catch it earlier. So that's my role.
So essentially you're saying that we've got to help people to learn to be self-advocates, and then also know who to call. Call Ann Elmore at the Secretary of State's office, because she is a tough cookie.
Well, thank you, but we have lots of wonderful people, thank goodness, at the Secretary of State's office. And Sue, you touched on vulnerable parents of children with serious illness. I just want to put a bug in y'all's brain. I'm thinking about the children with serious illness right now, but I'm also thinking about parents and the things that happen, the accidents, the injuries, the illness, and crime, right? Crime happens. And what happens if a parent is taken out suddenly? What about those kids? Where are the documents that designate who is to take care of those kids? Who can authorize medical care for those kids if mom and dad are not available? Where are those? Maybe I put a bee in your bonnet, I hope.
Great questions. Well, Anne, thank you very much for spending a half hour with us this morning and letting us get to know you a bit more and learning from your experiences, because it is very valuable. It's an important thing, and we appreciate everybody, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. So Anne, bless you.
Thank you all. Look forward to hearing about all of y'all.
Y'all stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you.